So, Carl, my friend, so good to see you. Um, First and foremost, how are you? How's the family? I believe you've had coronavirus.
I, I have actually, yeah. I didn't have any of the go-to symptoms though. There was no shortness of breath or the persistent cough, or what's the other one? The fever. I
Loss
did.
of taste.
I didn't even lose my taste. I had this weird, unsettling metallic taste in the back of my mouth. But the overriding symptom that I suffered from was fatigue, which to me was a real shock to the system because A, I don't really ever, to be honest, I just don't have a tendency to get sick. And B, I'm quite high energy. And so suddenly to find myself trying to walk across, I mean, even just walking, finding that like, wading through molasses was a real shock to the system. So it kind of brought me back to some of these ideas that I think we'll be booting around today, which is that I was thinking about it this morning as I was lying in bed getting up, that, that old phrase that some people are born great and some people have greatness thrust upon them. It's sort of some people are born slow and some people have slowness thrust upon them, right? And when I wrote my book In Praise of Slow, way back in 2004, I had it thrust upon me really through a personal existential crisis. But what's happening now, of course, is that all of us are having it thrust upon us through the corona crisis. So there's all kinds of odd parallels at work here. But the bottom line is that I'm now out the other end. Hopefully my body is teeming with antibodies and I can be part of the fight back here henceforth.
Great. You'll be the person in Safeways being able to get to the bargains while we'll just look through the window. And before we get any further, how's your family?
They're all well, actually. I think my daughter had it first, and it's kind of worked its way through the system. And if we follow the UK guidelines, actually today is the day that we are now allowed to go back outside again as a family. So yeah, we're keeping our heads above water and practicing a lot of what we preach, right? Because this has been a home marinated in the slow philosophy for more than a decade, right? And now we're having to walk the walk and talk the talk and stuff. And it's actually been pretty lovely, I have to say. I mean, I know that one of the things that horrendous global pandemics and international crises do is shine a light on the failings and frailties of our society. And it's become, I think, clear to those of us who it wasn't clear to before that we live in a very, very immensely unequal world where, just the size of people's homes and how they can afford to, cover food bills is very, very different from family to family. But I putting that all to one side, we're sort of obviously fairly comfortable. And so it's been there's the dealing with the downsides of it, but mostly a lot of it's been upside. It's been, lovely to have my older children back at home, and we're kind of cocooning and getting back to a lot of the kind of slow, reading aloud to each other, and a lot of family cooking and games, and we just laid out a massive puzzle on the kitchen table, right? So all the sort of slow activities that I've talked about and recommended to people over the years are all unfolding in this very household right now. So
that's amazing. I'm going to take you back, if I may, to the genesis of slow. But before I do that, you might want to park in your minds, everybody, what would you not give up when things get back to quotes normal? Should they do that? It might just be worth thinking what things you'd like to keep. I have a friend, Emma, who's discovered she had Parkinson's very early age. Some of you may know Emma. And she said that as difficult as it's been, she wouldn't give Parkinson's back because of what it's given her. So it just might be worth thinking, harvesting the things you wouldn't want to change. Should things get back to remember that, or how great normal was? Maybe not, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't that great. Anyway, listen, Carl, I want to pick up something you said, which is you are a high energy person. And I remember you telling me once, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's in the book, it's in Wonderful, but that you weren't a natural convert to slowness. Tell us a bit about your Road to Damascus experience, if you would, that kind of opened you up to the idea of slowness.
Yeah, no, I was definitely a card-carrying speedaholic, and the very idea, I mean, when I first mooted the idea of writing a book about slowing down, my inner circle, everybody laughed wryly. It just seemed completely absurd. And in fact, one of the first things that happened to me while I was researching the benefits of slowness and the virtue of putting on the brakes was that I got a speeding ticket, right? And at the time, I was actually driving in Italy, as you know, well from your own experience with Piemonte and so on, that, to get a speeding ticket in Italy, you have to be driving very fast, right? I mean, very fast. And the worst part was that I was actually at the time en route to a dinner being organized by a group called Slow Food, right? So I turned up, and it was so preposterous because I drove so fast, I arrived so early that the restaurant and the people weren't there, it wasn't open, and I just sat on the pavement with my €150 ticket contemplating how absurd it all was. But that wasn't the origin story really in Praise of Slow. For me, that was when I started reading bedtime stories to my son and found myself just really unable to slow down. So I'd go into his room at the end of the day, I'd sit on the bed with one foot on the floor, and I would just speed read Snow White, skipping lines, paragraphs, entire pages. I became an expert at what I call the multiple page turn technique, which I don't know if there are any parents out there, but we will all have been there, right? You're trying to skip 3, 4, but it never works because our children know the stories back to front. So my son would always catch me out. He'd say, Daddy, why are there only 3 dwarves in the story tonight? What happened to Grumpy? And this really lamentable state of affairs went on until I caught myself flirting with buying a book that I read about in, I think, the Financial Times. And the book was called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story. So Snow White in 60 seconds. And I remember reading that and thinking, hallelujah, that is written for me, that book. I need it now. Amazon, drone delivery. But then, of course, the proverbial second reaction and the light bulb over the head. And I suddenly thought, whoa, has it really come to this? Am I really in such a hurry? I'm prepared to fob off my little boy with a soundbite instead of a story at the end of the day. And it just rocked me, that moment of really quite searing epiphany. And I realized I just lost my bearings. I'd lost my compass. I'd lost my way. And I needed to get back. I needed to reconnect with my inner tortoise somehow. And that was the start. And of course, the journalist, the foreign correspondent, I wanted to understand not only my own addiction to speed and my own obsession with doing more and more all the time and less and less, time, that I wanted to understand the bigger picture. So immediately became a kind of global search and inquiry into our grappling with the virus of hurry.
Wow. That's the title of the episode. And for those people who haven't read it, looking back on that book, what did you learn? I mean, obviously lots of different things, but is there something about, did you learn anything, for example, about why we find it difficult to be slow? I mean, because a lot of people understand the need for slowness and probably looking back on their previous, 6 months ago was saying, God, I really need to slow down, I need more time at home, but also maybe unable to spring off and bounce off that idea. Did you discover anything about why human beings sort of resist the slowing down?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a catalog of reasons, and many of them are external. So there would be, the way the workplace has evolved, of course, to pile more and more pressure on us to do things faster and faster, tighter and tighter deadlines. Technology, especially in the last 15 years, has evolved to so that we're all wandering around with weapons of mass distraction in our pocket, and we have the tools to do things faster and faster. And I think that conditions us to expect everything to happen at the speed of software. I think the fact that the world has become an enormous smorgasbord of consumption, there's just so much to do, to experience, to eat, to buy, to order on Amazon, that the natural human instinct, we are creatures of the savannah, right? We're creatures of scarcity. We're not built to live in a time of abundance. And so that you see the same thing with obesity. Suddenly you surround everybody in a world where there's a Krispy Kreme donut on every corner, and we just don't know when to stop eating. And I think the same thing happens with just consumption and also even social connection. We're hardwired to seek out social connection. Then you give us social media and we just find ourselves lying in bed at night, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram, looking for likes, at 55 minutes later. So I think there's all of those kind of almost structural, historical, technological developments that have brought us to where we are. But in a way, what I found as I dug deeper into the book and the research and just sat with the ideas and thought about it, is that I think there's a deeper driver of speed and busyness. And that is it's almost like a metaphysical thing that I think for a lot of people, speed becomes an instrument of denial. It's a way of avoiding the bigger questions, such as, who am I? what is my purpose here? What kind of life am I living the right life for me? Where do I want to be in 10 years time? Those can be very frightening and unnerving questions to confront. It's much easier to sweat the small stuff and to focus on the little things like, where are my keys? I'm late for my 11 a.m., right? And I think that often explains how we get locked in fast forward. In fact, therapists often describe the final stage before burnout is one last burst of acceleration as the person's trying to run away from all of those problems until they smash into the wall and crash and burn out. So I think a lot of what's driving our speed culture is our inability just to be alone with our thoughts, to be in silence, to be in a moment that is free of distraction and stimulation and striving and achievement and measurableness, and just simply being. I think we've kind of lost the art of being. We become human doings instead of human beings. And of course, the deeper you go down that rabbit hole of being somebody who prioritizes doing, you get further away from who you are in the being column. And it gets harder, as you get further and further away, it gets harder to bridge that gap, I think. And for many of us, our head goes down and we dig deeper and deeper and deeper. We double down on the doing until something like, often for me, it was the existential awakening with the bedtime story, thinking, goodness me, I just can't keep being a human. I can't keep doing. I need to be being more, right? I think for many people, it's an illness. It'll be the body that just one day says, no, you cannot take this pace anymore, right? You've got to stop and do some existential homework, right? I saw someone talking about the benefits of the upsides of the COVID shutdown and the lockdown and this global slowdown that's being imposed on us. And I was thinking one way to think of it is that when at a time like this, when you cannot go outside, this is the time to go inside, right? This is the time to go inside and to do that existential homework, to ask those big questions and maybe not to find answers, right? It's not about suddenly snapping your finger, facing a big question, and 25 minutes later you got the answer, right? That's not the way it works. It's more about being with it and turning it over, and maybe you'll never find an answer. Maybe it will just lead to more questions, but at least you're wrestling with those important questions. And I sort of feel in some ways that when you made that point there, to remember what we liked about this moment or what we'd like to carry forward from it when things go back to whatever the normal looks like when this crisis is over. I hope that's something that we all are experiencing now and will take forward with us, is that because it's got to be happening, right? That there's only so many box sets you can watch on Netflix, right? I think many of us are going to be finding ourselves, however uncomfortable and unnerving it might be, facing ourselves, right? And just to see that as a springboard, right? A trampoline, a lever that we can pull, I think is a really helpful way to think about this crisis and try to see some kind of silver lining in it.
Mm. Wow, there's a lot there. If your head is fizzing the way mine is with Carl saying, and you've got questions or thoughts, just feel free, put them in the chat box or write them down. A couple of things, please.
Before you go on, I'm just going to switch gear. I heard a poem on the radio yesterday. It's very short, and I just love to read it out. Because I think that this is another thing I'm finding. I don't know. I'd love to hear from the rest of the group as well. And I'm a big reader, obviously, as a writer. But I tend to read novels, right? And I just find now that, again, in the same sense that you can only watch so many box sets, I sort of am beginning to feel kind of noveled out. So I'm going back to poetry a little bit now, and for the first time in a long time. And there's something about this moment, I think, that fits with the rhythms of poetry. That poetry, you cannot rush poetry, right? The whole point of poetry is that you don't speed read Emily Dickinson. It just doesn't work that way. So this is a poem that some of you may have heard. It was on Radio 4 a couple of days ago. It was John O'Donoghue, an Irish poet. And it just seemed to me to kind of nail where we are now. It starts off, this is the time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try, as best you can, not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart all sense of yourself and your hesitant light. If you remain generous, time will come good, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of promise, where the air will be kind and blushed with beginning. I just thought, I don't know, that gave me chills when I heard it, so I thought I'd just share it.
It's beautiful. Our poet in residence, Philip, very often brings in poetry to kind of fill the gap, I suppose, just to or to create a little bit. There's something about the rate of poetry that just kind of slows you down. There's so much. I'm trying not to be the paradox of the person that's trying to rush to ask you questions about slow, but I did just, you fired off something for me, and I think this is a time of, it's like the world's biggest book club. Everybody's sharing things between, but if you haven't seen it, there's a couple of things that have been very helpful for me. One is Nick Cave has a blog, which is, I think, called The Red Hand. But if you, he's written a really great blog at the moment, which is just, to me anyway, which was about, as a creator, his first impulse was to create stuff, you know, write songs, make films. But actually he's finding now's the time to lie low against the wall, as it were. Just like, you know what? Take an in-breath. Let's take an in-breath. Another great essay that someone sent me today is by a philosopher teacher called Zach Klein, I think is his name. And it's called, and that's Z-A-K. I can put it on off. So if Mark, if you remind me, I'll put it on this afterwards. But it's called A War in Heaven, I think, which is a very apocalyptic title. But essentially what he's talking about is, while we are currently involved in a kind of material struggle for food and, you know, making money and staying safe and so on, he's also talking about a kind of a contest in our psychology and in the noosphere between how we want it to be in future. He puts a sort of shocking statement out there. He said something like, and I'm going to paraphrase, you know, so the world has ended. Finally, now it's time to create a new one. Now, obviously, part of you goes, it sounds very apocalyptic, but he's inviting us to think there is no normal to go back to. It will be a new pasture, as you put it. How do we want that new pasture to be? We shouldn't wait for whoever it is, Boris Johnson or Trump, to deliver one. How are we going to be different in order to atomically, one by one, make the world more the way we want it to be, rather than give up to, oh, well, I'll accept the old normal because it was helpful. Anyway, that was the end of sermon. I want to come back to you. You fired that off for me, Carl, and I wanted to ask, I wanted to slide slightly sideways, actually, if I may, and talk about Boulder, and then maybe we'll open it up for questions and discussion. And maybe you could explain a little bit about Boulder. The reason I'm asking is because if we were to think of this as a breathing space between past and future, there are many people on this call have probably been thinking in a kind of abstract way about, well, what do I want to do next as I get a bit older? You know, we've sort of got used to, in developed countries, be promised a sort of third act, you know, which seems to go on till you're 80, 90. Maybe that won't be the case for a bit, but what are you going to do with that? And my sense is that Boulder, forgive me, obviously I've read Slow, but I haven't read Boulder yet. Sorry, my bad. But Pat, are there some thoughts that you've been mulling about from Boulder that could help us be thinking about how the next act might be for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just as a brief summary of what Boulder is about. With my first 3 books, I was tackling the cult of speed. What I'm doing with Boulder is tackling the cult of youth. So I'm taking on the idea that younger is always better and trying to pull down what seems to me a really toxic myth that aging is all about decline, loss, dementia, depression, failure, shame, guilt, et cetera, et cetera. So the book looks at sort of all the different ways in which, of course, some things do change that we don't like as we get older. That goes without saying, but many things, as it happens, stay the same, and some even get better, right? So I'm kind of trying to create a richer, more honest, more optimistic story to tell about getting older. And part of that is that it seems to me that we're moving into there's a tectonic shift going on around aging and what aging means. And part of what that is that chronological age is increasingly losing its power to define and limit us, right? So what matters more and more nowadays is not whether you're 32, 42, 52, 72, or 82. What matters are the choices you make. So what matters are the box sets you watch on Netflix, the food you cook for the people you love, the places you like to travel, the music that makes you want to get up and dance, the art that brings you to tears, the politics you espouse, the work you do, right? And a lot of that, of course, is down to us, right? It's now I don't ever use the phrase 50 is the new 30 or 40 is the new 20 or whatever, because I think that is also ageist in the sense that 50 is still 50, right? And it always will be, right? It could just be better than it's been at any point in human history. And to say that 50, to pretend that you are 30 at 50 seems to me to be playing into this cult of youth, right? Rather than trying to detonate it. Because think of all the things you're denying, all the 20 years of learning and experience and love and laughter and tears and so on. Anyway, so we're coming back to this tectonic shift. I mean, two quick examples. Amazon and Netflix, for instance, no longer track their users based on chronological age. They do it now based on taste. So what matters to Amazon is what you buy in the lead up to Christmas for the people that you love on your list, right? Or to Netflix, what matters is whether you watch Breaking Bad to the end or not, right? Not whether you're 52 or 72. And I think that's the new world that we're stepping into now. And it means, in other words, that at any age, people with a little bit of luck, obviously, and the right attitude, more and more we can define what that age is going to be like for us. We can push a reset button. And it doesn't have to be as rigid as saying there's a first act, a second act, a third act, and you've got to wait till you're 50 to push the reset button. It's more, I think, in my conception of it, saying that whatever age you are, you take time at some stage and just pause and say, well, who am I? You know, what can I bring to the party? What do I want my version of 37, 47, 87 to be? And I think in some ways what I see the connection here with what's happening around us now is that what is being thrust upon us is a moment of reset, right? A moment where we just have to stop. The old normal is gone. We don't quite know what's coming next, but certainly on an individual level, we're being forced to just pause, to think, to go inside instead of outside. And that's the time when you start, I think that's when you have the space and the freedom and the intellectual bandwidth to reset your own life, to choose what the next chapter is going to look like. And I do imagine it'll be very interesting to see once we get out of this and people start pulling the stories together and pooling the experience we've all had and what it's done to us. I think you will see an awful lot of people. I mean, we're always hearing about there'll be a baby boom 9 months from now, or there'll be a divorce boom, you know, as soon as the lockdown's lifted. I think we're going to see a different kind of boom that people are talking about a lot less. I think people are going to do a reset boom on their lives, right? In a big way. And that, you know, I think that will be at all ages, to be honest. It may be that we see it more heavily in later life, you know, maybe from 40 onwards when people have perhaps a little bit more, you know, cloth to play with financially, and also things happen to the way we think in our brains. We become more at ease in our own skin, more comfortable with ourselves as we grow older. So we're more likely to be able to reset boldly in our, say, 40s or 50s, and we might be at the mid 20s and we're freaking out about what everybody thinks of us. But I do think I do feel that we will see a big reset for an awful lot of people as we go forward from this at the end.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's not just, I mean, I would guess most of the people on this call have stumbled here through different routes, but they're probably quite shared values and probably quite similar, I'm guessing, you know, from what I've seen of Street Wisdom. But there's all sorts of, there's realms of other people who are probably going to have change thrust upon them in a way that is unarguable and irreversible and really uncomfortable. I'm not saying it isn't for us either, but so I'm agreeing. I think our identity is tied up with our context, and when the context changes, it's difficult to figure out who you are.
I do think there is a kind of the fact with aging. People again, this is part of the problem with the culture. It seems to me is that we've painted ourselves into a rhetorical corner where the idea of an aging population is always held up as a bad thing, right? You know, a silver tsunami, and we're always being told we're going to be overrun by people's dementia, and the world, you know, full of people telling us how much better life was 50 years ago and so on. I mean, there's so many reasons why that's just a false narrative, right? And I think we're going to see more and more of that now. We're going to see, because this is when resilience was going to have to, you know, the traditional resilience, everybody banging on about resilience. But, you know, people are really going to have to kick in now and be resilient. And I think we're going to find that from all generations, but we're going to see it from maybe people in later life, perhaps in some ways more or certainly differently. And that may change some of the perceptions we have of people, of of older people. And I think also when we come out of this lockdown and we really, I don't know, I feel it's like, you know, at the end of the night at a nightclub, right? When it's sort of 2 a.m. and then suddenly they kill the music and the lights come on. And it's that horrifying moment when you see the person you're dancing with, you see yourself in the mirror, and you think, oh my God, this is just horrific, right? How could we have been doing this? This is just so unsexy. I feel like we're kind of heading to one of those moments again. We had one a little bit with the global financial crisis, but we completely wasted that opportunity to change the world. I think historically, if you look back, often it takes 2 big crises, and it's the second one that really focuses minds. And just because of the nature of this one, it may be that this one is the one that actually makes us rethink profoundly and actually make some changes. But what we're going to need most when we come out of this global cocoon, back blinking into the light of day again together, and start asking those questions about what kind of world we want to have henceforward, we're going to need people who are happy to speak their mind and who are less worried about what other people think of them. And that is one of the main benefits of growing older, right? And anyone on this call, probably over the age of 40, will recognize it, that you just don't care that much about what other people think. And that can sometimes make people a bit cantankerous and awkward, but we need cantankerous and awkward now. We're going to need it more and more, I think. Just to round out that thought, there's a wonderful quote, I think I've got it in the book somewhere, which is from Ann Landers, the legendary agony aunt from the United States. She says that at 20, people worry about what other people think of them. At 40, they stop worrying about what other people think of them. And at 50, we realize they were never thinking about us at all, right?
That's right.
I think what that gets at is that lightness that can come on you in the second half of life, right?
Yeah.
Where you realize, you know what, I don't have to tiptoe around other people's expectations.
Yeah.
I am not beholden to other people's views. I can forge my own path. I can speak my own mind. I can speak truth to power. And that is what we're going to need to do in spades when we get out of the door again, months from now, or weeks, who knows, we'll see. But I'm expecting to see that led by, more and more by people in that bracket that we're talking about here. So
Rich, thank you, Carl. Thank you. I'm going to throw things open. I've got a hunch that people are, as much as they might intellectually, and this might just be me, appreciate slow, might be getting a little bored of slow. And maybe you've got some Honoré family tricks. I mean, I don't want to cheapen, I don't want to cheapen this, but maybe there are some things that you do. I mean, you and I have discussed things that we do a little bit together, we do in similar, like sketching and so on. I've found, I mean, those who haven't tried it, Street Wisdom Comes Home is a repurposing of some of the street-based work for the home, which is designed to help you feel that you can go for voyages of discovery, the inner work that Carl talked about, without leaving the house. So there's that. But maybe sharing some ideas together about how we can really, Tanya is saying, I think in her note here, which is that finding the reset button might not be so easy for everybody. It might be that this time is actually incredibly fast for people. They're very stressed. They've got lots of work. They're teachers and so on. And even with this extrinsic, these conditions, we still might be able to avoid resetting. But have you learned anything? Let me ask, have there been times in this lockdown when you felt, boy, I really need to read my own book? Did you feel like, oh God, or I mean, were you, when you were ill, were you, did you, you don't share what you don't want to, but did you find yourself asking big questions?
I did a little bit. No, you had 2 questions there. The first was, so far, I have not had that feeling that I need to go back and reread the book. I've pretty much been walking the talk so far. But I definitely, when I got ill, just because I'm someone who really doesn't get ill, it was at a time when a lot of the discussion of, I think the first thing I read when I was lying in bed was a story about how people in their 30s and 40s were dying, surprisingly. And I began actually for the first time to think in a visceral way about dying, weirdly. I mean, part of what I was looking at in Boulder is the importance of thinking about death and trying to forge a more kind of natural, fluid almost light relationship with the idea that we all have a deadline somewhere. And so I have actually been thinking about death in quite a wide way for some time now. But this was different, right? This brought the chickens home to roost in a way, because I was, lying in bed in that most primal state, which is when the human animal feels unwell, right? And the kind of visceral cellular fear. And then the fear of feeling, well, not only will I die, but then what my family, I've got children, right? And so all those kind of fears crowded in. And so, yeah, I guess in that sense, it has been a wake-up call. I'd been thinking up until that point that obviously for me, work-wise, it's been an annihilation, right? Because so much of what I do, as do you, it involves being around people, being on stage, being in events, and that has just been completely obliterated. So from that point of view, I'm having to think, well, I'm just gonna, dig into my savings and just try and keep our family afloat that way. But I was thinking up until I got sick, I was thinking, well, I will just ride this out. And that was the time when I thought, well, maybe I won't, or maybe I shouldn't be thinking like that. Maybe I do need to be doing some kind of reset here. And even me myself, I've been maybe got to be complacent, right? And that's my wake up call, right? That feeling of fragility and brittleness. It was I had one long night of the soul in there, I tell you.
Yeah. What just to be honest, one of the things I think that makes you a great communicator is you've been through this stuff. It's not like you're some slow guru that's always been, you've seen the other side of it. Like the best teachers, you've fallen a lot. And that's why I think people can relate.
I did actually fall, talk about falling. I fell slightly today, to be honest, because I'm somebody who loves sports, and I do lots of sports, and I found it really hard not playing sports or doing a lot of active things. And as soon as I felt better from the COVID, I immediately today went back at it quite hard.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of a mini crash where my body just said, whoa, there's a book out there you want to read. So I suppose in that sense, you're probably right. I should have been that. Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.